Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Mr. Wiz here. If you are new to this channel, we build video games. Right now we're working our way through a Unity beginner's course, and we are working specifically on this 2D mobile game that we've been doing for a couple videos now. So right now, I've got a pretty simple game, but not a bad game. I've got a player that can move back and forth when I click on the left or the right side of the screen. I got objects moving down the screen randomly, and if I hit any of these objects, my ship gets destroyed. So, what we're going to do now is it's time to add the projectile element of the game for the player. I want to be able to shoot at these objects to help me play this game. So, today's video is going to be I'm going to move kind of fast, but the reason for that is there's not really new information in this video. Everything I'm going to be showing you is stuff that we've probably done before. We might be using it in some new ways, but it's things that we've done. So this won't be new concepts. This will be practicing some old skills that maybe you haven't done in a little while. So make sure you're paying attention and following along with me so we can get this working correctly. So here's the basic idea. I need my player to be able to shoot objects that can collide with the asteroids. So obviously the collision part for whatever I shoot and the objects that are falling will be very similar to the collisions that we did in the last video, right? So that's going to be very similar code. Getting the projectile that I shoot to move will be very similar to the code for the falling objects. This will just be moving the opposite direction. Instead of coming down, this will be going up. So again, very similar code. Now, how will I get it to shoot becomes the question. I'm thinking the best way that I should do this would be with an actual button on the screen that I can tap on that will cause the firing to work. Buttons is also not something that should be new to you if you did the flying project before this one. We had a button that restarted the game. This time we're going to have a button that causes the firing. So yeah, a lot of things here that we've done before, just going to be using them maybe in slightly different ways than what we've done before. So let's get started. Which thing should I tackle first? I'm thinking, let's go ahead and make the projectile. So I'm going to go over here to my hierarchy window and I'm going to create a new object. Now I could go download something, an image, but really all I'm making is a laser, just something that I can shoot with. It doesn't need to be a fancy picture. I can create this with simple shapes. So I'm going to right click in the hierarchy and I'm going to go down here to the create. We've created simple shapes before, but we've always done it with 3D objects. Now we're going to do it with a 2D object. So I'm going to go to create a 2D object and there's some different things here. It'll be under sprites. And these are some of the basic shapes that I have to begin with. I could do a square or rectangular shape if I wanted to. I could do a triangular shape if I wanted to. I'm just going to go with capsule because I wanted to do a laser type shape. If I went with square, I could do a rectangular laser shape. That would work fine. But I feel like for my game, I like the way a capsule would look better. So I'm going to go with a capsule. You pick whatever shape you feel like fits your game. So this is the 2D capsule shape that we have right here. Let me switch over to scene view so I can actually edit it. So this is the capsule shape. And then over here, I have the things that I can change about it. So just like you're used to seeing, I can change the size. I can change the rotation. I can do all that stuff. What I want to do is I just want to make it skinnier and smaller, right? Let me zoom out a little bit so I can compare it to the size of my ship. Obviously, if that's the size of my ship, I need it to be much smaller than the ship. I am going to switch the position to 0, 0. So it's in the center of my game screen right now. And I'm going to change the scale here with the scale tool. Let's make it much skinnier. And you know what? That's pretty long. Let's not make it that long. I have to decide a size that I think fits good for my game. I'm thinking maybe something like that. That doesn't look bad. How does it compare to the size of the ship? It's about the same size as the ship, so I could go a little bit shorter maybe if I wanted to. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. It doesn't need to be too fancy. I'm basically just making a curved line is what I'm doing here, right? As I mentioned, I could have used the square shape, which would be an actual rectangle, but I think the curved line looks better for what I'm trying to do. I can change the color now right here, so let's go ahead and decide what color I want my laser to be. Maybe I go with a bright yellow. That looks kind of good. Maybe I want to go with like a more of an orangish or goldish color. Ooh, I like that. That's a good color for a laser. I think I might keep that one. And I'm not really worried about a lot of the rest of this. I can just leave that the way it is. So I've got my laser that looks good. Now I need it to work correctly. So I need my laser to move up in much the same way that my obstacles, my falling objects, move down. So I'm just going to end up copying a lot of the same code. If I look at my obstacle script, it has on here, in the update, this is what causes it to move, the transform.translate, and it moves down. And then down here I have an if, where if it leaves the screen, it gets destroyed. For my laser, if it leaves the screen, do you think I should have it also get destroyed when it leaves the screen? Why was it important for the falling objects to get destroyed when it leaves the screen? It was important because if I had a bunch of them, it could cause lag. Well, the same would apply to this. If I shoot a bunch of lasers up in the air and they don't hit anything and they just go off into space, I need them to destroy themselves or they could create lag. So really, both of these things that are in my obstacle controls, I'm going to make a similar version in my laser controls. So let's go ahead and write a new script. So I'm in my script folder, I'm creating a new script. And let's quickly name it, I'm going to name it Laser Controls. There we go. And then, of course, the first thing I always do is check the public class to make sure that it matches. Public class laser controls, yep. If it didn't say that, if the name didn't match, then I have a problem because it's not going to work, right? So I'm going to click on my laser, which I haven't named yet. It's still called Capsule. Let's just go ahead and name it. I'll call that laser as well so I know what it is. And I'm going to put my new laser controls on the laser. There we go. Now I can start editing them. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of the code I'm going to be using is in the obstacle controls. I'm just going to be changing them. So let me go ahead and open up both of these. I'll open up the obstacle controls, and then I will open up the laser controls. And we're going to end up moving a lot of this code over. So these are all happening inside the update function. Let me just go ahead and copy, because I'm going to be using a version of both of these. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put it in my laser control update. Make sure you put it between the two brackets in the update function. And now we can start to edit it. So right now it is moving it down. For my laser, I need it to move up. And then with the position, right now, it gets destroyed when it is less than -8. I need it to get destroyed when it goes to the top of the screen. So let's say instead of -8, I go +8. And instead of less than, it would be greater than. I can test that out. If 8's not a good number, I can change it later. I'm just basically doing the reverse version of the falling objects. I feel like it'll probably work. So we have up, we have 8, and we switch it to greater than. Is there anything else that I need to change? Oh, my variable here. So this is the speed of the falling objects. I need to set a speed for my laser. How fast does the laser shoot? I really don't know how fast the laser should shoot, so I should make it a variable, so I can change it later. Instead of calling it speed, I'm going to call it laser speed. Capitalize the S in speed. Now, since this is a variable, I do need to create the variable. I haven't done that yet. Let me just go ahead and copy that. So remember, we create variables above the start function. So I'm just going to say public, the number. So I have to choose either integer or float. Let's just go with float. So public float, and I can paste that laser speed, put my semicolon at the end. Am I missing any other semicolons? Don't think so. I think I'm ready. So let's save this, Control S. Let's go back to the game. So now my laser has the script on it. It doesn't have a speed yet, so let's just go ahead and give it one. I'll give it 5 for now. I don't know if that's good or not. I haven't tested it. So let's zoom out and see what happens when I run it. What should happen is it should shoot up, and then it should be destroyed when it leaves the screen a little ways. So let's see. Oh, it goes up, and it did get destroyed right around there. Okay, cool. So it looks like those controls are working well for my laser. I am going to need to save the laser as a prefab, but before I do that, let's do a couple more things to it. Eventually, we will need to give it collision controls, so when the laser hits an asteroid or some other falling object, it destroys them. So let's go ahead and give it a collider then, because remember, in order for that to work, both objects have to have a collider. Our falling objects already are set as trigger, so we just need to give this guy a collider. We don't need to set it up as a trigger as well, because only one of the objects needs to have a trigger. Which collider would fit best with this shape? It is a capsule shape, so let's just use a capsule collider. That seems simple enough. Capsule collider 2D. and it looks like it's already fitting it pretty well, so I don't have to edit it at all. I don't need to set up as a trigger since my falling objects are triggers. So now if it hits one of the asteroids, it can trigger an event. Our events right now, they're in the player controls, right? For this, on trigger, enter 2D, yeah. Let's do the same thing we did before. Let's copy this function and put it in our new script. So let me open up the player controls. I'm going to take the on trigger, enter 2D. I'm just going to copy this whole function. So both parts of the brackets, right? In this part, I'm going to copy this, Control C. Let's switch over to laser control, and let's paste this function. So I need to put it after the update function. Let me just go ahead and create a couple lines there. But before this last bracket, that last bracket's important. A lot of my students make mistakes because they'll delete this by accident. That last bracket's important. It tells us where the script ends, right? So the script is starting there and it's ending here. So we need to put the function after the update bracket, but before the closing bracket. So I'm going to go ahead and paste it right there. So now if it hits one of my asteroids, it should destroy the asteroid and the laser. It should be destroying both of them because it's the same script we had on the player earlier. Let me save this. All right, so we have a laser that moves up. It gets destroyed if it leaves the screen, and it gets destroyed if it hits an object. Pretty good start. I don't think we'll have any errors yet because the code we're using is code we know works. We've used it in other things. Okay, cool. All right, so I think I'm ready to save this laser as a prefab. So let's go to my prefab folder, and let's drag and drop the laser as a prefab. Creating it as a prefab means that I can call on it later when I create my instantiate code. So now that it's in the prefabs, I can delete the one that's in the hierarchy. There we go. All right, so we have a working laser. Our next step is I need to have something that allows me to shoot the laser from the player. And I decided I want to do that with a button on the screen. We haven't done any buttons on the screen in this game, but we have done buttons on the screen in our flying game. So that's why I have it open in a separate window here. If we look at how we did it in our flying game, I have the button right here, which is part of the canvas. And then basically we said on click, it would go to the game manager and pull the function out of the game manager. So we had a function that restarted the game. And when we clicked the button, it ran that function and it restarted the game. That's how we did this. So what I'm thinking is we need to create a function that shoots lasers and then have the button run that function. So that's two things really we have to do right now. We have to create the function that shoots the laser, and we have to create the button that runs the function that shoots the laser. Okay, so let's go back to our program. And what should we do first? Should we do the function or should we do the button? Let's go ahead and do the button. So to create the button, I can either right-click in the hierarchy window or I can click this plus sign right there. We're going to go to UI, and we're going to go to Button Text Mesh Pro. Button Text Mesh Pro. All right, and I just got this weird little blurb there. Let's zoom out. So there's the button it just created. And it is definitely not where I need it. So I'm going to have to move it soon. So I have to zoom out to see. This is the canvas. So if you didn't do the button lesson with us in the previous project, the canvas always appears much larger than the window that our game is actually in, right? But that is where we edit it. So this is the canvas, and this box we're seeing is basically the same size as our mobile device. And I need to set the button up to the size and position that I want it. I decided that I want my button in the middle of the screen down near the bottom. So I'm going to set the X position right here to 0, so it's centered. And now I just need to make it much, much larger. So let's use the scale tool here and decide how big we actually want this button to be. Let me move it maybe right around there. I want it in the middle, but I want it to be somewhere where I can actually tap it with my thumb when I'm playing the game, right? Let's see how this looks on the simulator. So it's right there on this device. If I switch to a different device, like the Z Fold, which is my thinnest one, it looks like it's still in a pretty good place. Let's switch to a normal size phone. Ooh, I don't see it on the normal size phone. Where did it go? Oh, it actually fell below. Okay, so this is a good problem, because this reminded me of something I almost forgot. Let's switch back to one of the other devices where it was in the good place. I'm going to switch it to the tablet. Okay, I really like that position on the tablet. We need to lock this into that position. So here's how we do that. If I click on the button over here in the hierarchy, I have my X position set to 0. I like this Y position. It's in a good place on the screen, but I forgot to anchor it. So right here where it says middle center, it is currently anchoring this based on the middle of the screen. I don't want it to anchor the button based on the middle. I want it to anchor the button based on the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to choose bottom and center right here. Now, even if the screen changes sizes, the button should still be in the same relative position to the bottom center of the screen. So let's check it now on the other devices. The Z Fold, it still looks good. And if I switch it to the Galaxy 5 where I couldn't see before, I can now see it. There we go. So no matter what device I pick, it should always be in the bottom center now, because I have it locked into that position. Cool, cool, cool. I'm glad I had that problem on the Galaxy Pixel, or I would have forgotten to tell you about that. So we're locking it in place. We did this in the last flying game, but I forgot to mention it on this one. Okay, so I've got my button. It's where I want it. It looks great. I could change the color right here if I wanted to. So for a fire button, maybe I want to make it red. That's almost too... I kind of like that gold color. I might do that. And there are different colors down here where it says button. There's the normal color, the highlighted color, and the selected color. So basically, the button will change colors when you click on it, right? So maybe when I click on it, it becomes red. I might do that. Let's see what this looks like in game. It won't fire anything yet, but I can at least see the color. So in game, yep. Okay, I clicked on it and it turned red and it stayed that way. I don't love that. Let's change these other ones. So I'm just changing a couple of the colors. Oh, there's a pressed color, which is gray. Once it's pressed, what color do I want it to be when it's pressed? Maybe a dark red? I don't know. Let's see what this looks like. I'm just playing around with all sorts of colors now. It's still staying red after I click on it. I don't like that. Let's switch it back to, for the selected color, that orange one. Okay, I kind of like this. This isn't bad. All right. So those colors work for me. I could always play around with them more if I wanted to, but feel free to edit the colors however you want to. To edit the text, remember over here on the left-hand side in the hierarchy, you have to click on that arrow next to the button, and there's the text part right there. Now, I forgot to mention it because I've already downloaded it, but the first time you add the Canvas button to your program, it probably had a little pop-up asking you about the Text Mesh Pro stuff, and if you want to download it, I would definitely suggest you do that because it gives you fonts that you can play around with like these. So I'm going to change my button to say fire, and I think I'm going to do all caps for that, and I can pick a font that I think looks good. Ooh, that one's kind of cool. I like that one. I'll leave it with that one. All right. And I can change the color, and I can change other things. I do want it to be centered, so I'll leave it set to centered. I actually like it black, so I don't think I'll change that. This is a pretty good fit for me, I feel like. All I really wanted to change was the font and the text. Okay, so I've got a button. Right now, it doesn't do anything other than change colors when I press it. I still need it to fire from the spaceship. Also, I'm noticing that it's kind of hiding my spaceship. You see how my spaceship's kind of hiding behind the button? I should probably move my ship a little bit so we can see it more clearly. So let me grab my ship object, which I called player, and let me move it up just a hair. Let me zoom in. So right now it's down there. Let's bring it up a little bit so I can still see it above the button. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's not bad. I could bring it up a little bit more, maybe, even. Let's see. Bum, bum, bum. So I'm just trying to get it to look the best that it can look. There we go. Back in the simulator. Oh yeah, I like that. So I've got my button in a good place. I've got my player in a good place. Now I need the button to shoot the lasers that we created, right? So before I can do that, I do need to create the function that shoots the lasers. So let's go back to our script. And let's go to the player controls. Because in the player controls, I need it to create a new function. So this will be a public function. That's important because in order for the button to find it, it needs to be public. It needs to be visible. So public, void, and then what do I want to call this function? I think I'll just call it fire. Put my parentheses there, hit enter, put my curly brackets there, hit enter. Okay, so I put this after the on trigger enter and before that closing bracket because that's important. So I've got my new function here that the button will run when I press it. What do I need this to do? I need it to create the projectile. Do you guys remember that word that we learned about that means to create something in Unity? The word was instantiate. So when I press the button, I need it to instantiate. And then I put my parentheses behind it. And remember, when we instantiate, we put three things. What are we creating? Where are we creating it? And how is it going to be rotated? So what am I creating? I'm creating the laser, the projectile. I do need to create a prefab for this, though. I'm sorry, not a prefab. I already have a prefab. I do need to create a variable for this. So up here, where I've got my variables in my player controls, we're going to create one more. Let's make it a public game object. And what should we call this variable? I'm just going to call it projectile. Because even though it's a laser in my game, it might not be a laser in yours. It might be something else, right? So I'm going to create a public game object called projectile, which I can assign in a few moments. So I want to, when I press the fire button, it's going to instantiate that same projectile that I just created. What is its position going to be? I need the projectile to spawn where the player is, right? So since this is the player's controls, and it is assigned to the player, I just need to put transform dot position. I don't have to tell it what object's position, because if you don't put something before the transform, it just uses whatever object the script is on. This is the player controls. It is on the player. So when I put transform.position, it knows it is the player's position that I'm talking about. Okay, then the last one is the rotation. I just want to use the original rotation of the prefab. So we're going to put projectile dot transform. Oh, I forgot the S in transform. There we go. You got to watch your spelling. Dot rotation. So we're going to use the original projectiles rotation. And we're going to put the semicolon there. Did I remember to put the semicolon after my variable? I did. I think I'm good then. Let's go ahead and save. Control S to save. Let's go back to our program. Please no error messages. Nope. All right, good. So I'm going to click on my player. And I need to update. So we're now in our player controls. We have the projectile where it says none. You guys know where I'm going with this already. I need to go to prefabs, and I need to put my laser on there. So whatever you're going to use as the object that your player is shooting, you need to put that inside of the projectile. Okay, so now my fire function is ready to work. It has a projectile on it. It has the script on it. Now I just need to tell the button to use it. So I'm going to go back to the button. I'm going to scroll down here to where the button stuff is, and it says on click, and my list is currently empty. So I need to add to this on click what I want it to do when I click the button. So I'm going to click the plus sign, and I have runtime, and I have object none. So I need to put an object in here. Basically what it's asking is for the object that has the script. Okay? So we edited the player control script. What object has the player control script on it? The player, right? So I need to grab my player, and I'm going to drag it where it says none for object. So I've got my player in there. Now I need to tell it what function. So when I press the button, what function from the player does it need to run? I'm going to click on it. I see some different things here. I'm going to click on player controls because that's the name of the script, right? And then over here, I'm looking for fire. There it is, fire. So when I press the button, it should run the fire function from my player control script, which is on my player. And that fire function should shoot the laser. So I know it's been a little minute since we've been able to test it. Here's where we test it to make sure that all this stuff is working. Let's go. If I hit fire, it shoots my laser. There we go. Oh, hold up. My laser didn't destroy anything. Let me test that again. Why is my laser not destroying anything? Did I forget to put something on my laser? Let's click on my laser here. I have laser controls on there. I have my collider on there. Didn't we put in the laser controls? Didn't we give it the script? Script, laser controls. On trigger, enter. Yeah. So why is it not working? On trigger, enter, 2D, other. So if it collides with another object, it should be destroying both objects. Why is that not working? Oh, I forgot to put rigid body on it. Remember our rules? In order for the collision, this function to work, both objects have to have a collider, one of them has to have a trigger, and one of them has to have rigid body. When we did our ship, we put rigid body on the ship, so I need to put rigid body on my laser. Let's go back to the prefab. Let's open up the laser. Let's put rigid body on the laser. Rigid body 2D, of course, since this is a 2D game. And we are going to set the gravity to 0. All right, let's try it now. Still not working. Did I forget to save? Back out of laser, save it. Yeah, I forgot to save. Let's try this again. It works! So what's kind of interesting here is I'm noticing that even while it's firing, it's still moving on the screen. I honestly don't mind that. You might find that annoying. I don't mind that. Feel free to make your fire button smaller if you want to. Mine's pretty big, so it's taking up a lot of the screen. But if you don't want that to happen, you could always try making your fire button smaller. So yeah, we've got working projectiles. They are leaving the ship. They are hitting the object where we want them to. It is, the collisions are working. This is not bad. Let me make one small addition, just in case you have this problem. Right now, my laser is spawning from the middle of my ship, which is exactly where I want it to come from. But let's say for some reason you didn't want it to come from that. Maybe you have an interesting shaped ship. Maybe you have something like an X-Wing, where the lasers are on the sides of the ship instead of in the middle. You might want to shoot more than one. You might want to create, one on both sides. If you wanted to do something like that, you could change the position the layer is coming from with an offset code. So let's look at that real quick. In my laser controls, actually not my laser controls, in my player controls, when it creates the object, we have it spawning at the player's position, which means it's spawning from the middle of the player. If I wanted to change that, I would have to give it additional information. So I could do this by saying plus new vector 3, and I could give it the stats on how far to the left, how far to the right I wanted it to do, right? In fact, I actually don't really need to use vector 3. I could use a vector 2, but since vector 3 is all we've been working with, it doesn't hurt anything. So yeah, so I could say that I wanted it to spawn 1 meter to the right or 1 meter up, and we'll leave 0 for the Z since this is a 2D game. So I could do that if I wanted to. And let me just show you what that looks like. It's going to look weird, but I'm going to save it and just show you what this looks like. You do not need to copy this part. What we're going to notice it's going to shoot it's not going to shoot from the ship anymore. You see that? It's now shooting a meter above the ship and a meter to the right of the ship. So offset is a way you can change exactly where the laser is coming from. So if it doesn't look good in your game, coming from the middle, you could change the offset by changing the X and the Y here. Now, if you don't want to do it from the code, you could also do it by creating a variable called offset. Again, you don't need to do this. If you like the way your laser works, don't worry about this. But you could create a vector 3 variable called offset. Save it. And now you can change it directly from, Unity Hub. You don't need to go into the code anymore, right? So I can go into the player. There's my offset. And I can test it out, and I can set how far up, how far to the left or the right. So for right now, I'm shooting from the middle of my ship. Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to shoot from 0.5 meters above my ship. So I can change that now. And there it is. It actually looks pretty good. Not that there was anything wrong with the way I had it before, but now it's shooting from like the tip of the ship instead of shooting from the middle of the ship. So, offset is something you can do if you don't like the way that it's appearing, if the projectile is coming from a weird part of your ship. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video now. Once again, most of what we did here, other than that offset thing I just showed you, everything else that we did in this video is stuff we've done before. We're just using it in a slightly different way than we did before. So if you did learn something new today, make sure you click that like button. If you didn't learn something new, but it was a good refresher, I'd still love it if you click the like button. If you are not following this channel, please follow it. And I hope you guys catch up with us in the next video as we continue to make this game even better. We'll start giving it points and other things. All right. I'll see you guys later.